We've got one last session for you guys. We made it. We've gone for like, how many hours has this been now? I think we're at like hour number 4. We've got a long form session coming up now. It is 4 p.m. Chicago time, getting close to beer o'clock. I'm looking forward to that. I just am impressed with the format and the quality and the engagement. I don't know if you guys have been watching, but there's tons of comments. And hang in there, guys. Don't go anywhere. This is well worth it. We're going to wrap it up with a comprehensive approach, a content strategy that will drive results with the data to prove it, from Michael Brenner. Let's start with some quick introductions. Dale, tell us about yourself.
So my name is Dale Bertrand. Just want to make sure everybody can hear me and see me and all that good stuff.
Sound great. Look great.
All right. So my name is Dale Bertrand. I run Fire and Spark. We're an agency in Boston, Massachusetts. Welcome,
Dale. Michelle.
I'm the Vice President of Product Innovation at integrated marketing agency AimClear. Been in marketing technology for over 20 years now. So happy to be here. Thanks to Semrush for having us and for everyone sticking around, sharing their day with us.
And as we turn it over to Michael, I just want to send one more reminder, guys. This is all recorded. We're sharing all the slides. Every panelist, every presenter is making themselves available to answer more questions if we don't get to your input online. Please keep engaging with us. We love the input. We're going to do our best to get to everyone's question. And I saw it mentioned earlier, if you're on YouTube, subscribe button's right there. The content coming out of Semrush is outstanding. Today has been no exception. And now, without further ado, the man, the one, the only, one of the original content strategists that I first heard about and read about and learned from in my early days in content, Michael Brenner. Thanks for being here. Tell us, give us the high level.
Can you hear me? You can hear me okay?
Great. You look great. Yep.
Awesome. I didn't wear a tie, but I did put on a collared shirt, so I can't, Brian has certainly overdone the rest of us, I think. But yeah, Andy, we've known each other a long time. I've looked up to you as well. And Michelle and Dale, we've only just met in the pre-call that we had a couple days ago. So, and Dale only for a minute. So just for everyone to know, I'm going to present for about 30 minutes. And I've asked these 3 amazing smart folks to challenge me, to throw apples at the screen, whatever it's going to take. I want to make sure that your challenges, your questions are heard. We'll get to obviously the questions that you're going to ask in chat. But I don't want to just be talking for an hour. So 25 minutes to go over a kind of a quick case study on how we generate traffic, leads, and all of our customers from really SEO driven content marketing. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully you'll see it while I introduce myself. Here we go. And you tell me when you can see it, Andy.
We can see it. You're in presentation mode. You probably can't see us or the chat while you're in here.
That's right. I can't. So I'll rely on you to yell at me when needed.
Nope. A+. We're good.
All right. So as you can see, slides are available here. I know Semrush is going to share them with all of you, but if you want to just go grab it, here's a bit.ly link I created. It's usually the first question I get, so I just wanted to take that off the table. As I mentioned, I'm going to talk about how we use content to rank for search and win all of our new customers. We don't spend money on paid. I'll talk a little bit about that later. I am the CEO of Marketing Insider Group. We are a very small, content-focused marketing strategy agency. I also do keynote speaking when conferences are happening live or here like this in person. And I've written a couple books, The Content Formula, and most recently a book called Mean People Suck, which was fun to write. Just quick context, 24-year career in sales and mostly in marketing. I worked for large companies like SAP and Nielsen. I worked for startups and small companies where I love to say I learned how to do content how to do marketing without a budget. And the answer was always content. I found that when I worked at a research company, sharing stats and thought leadership like Andy talked about earlier was a great way to grow the traffic and to deliver leads to sales without spending any money. When I worked for large companies, I found we spent lots of money on content that generated 0 results and a small amount of money on thought leadership, helpful, customer-focused content that generated all of the results. And so I learned over time and now applied this at the Marketing Insider Group with our clients, how to use content to rank for search. Now, it is 5 o'clock here on the East Coast, so I will not be offended if you want to run and grab a martini or a beer or a glass of wine.
Yeah, people are telling us what time it is where they are. Let us know in the chat where you're calling in from and what time it is, and if it's a legitimate time to open Had to have a drink wherever you are, quarantined or no. But yeah, perfect timing for this and the perfect GIF.
I find that I'm funnier and better looking the more people drink. So just keep them flowing. Okay, so you all know this. Content today has to compete with pictures of babies and kittens and puppies. This is a little puppy that we ordered during the pandemic lockdown. This is Bruce. He's a Bern Doodle, a Bernese Mountain Dog mixed with a Doodle. He was only about 10 pounds when we got him. He's now about 25 pounds. So he's growing fast at 4 months. But, the content we're creating as a brand, I want you to think about the latest ebook or maybe an infographic from Brian. I'm not sure how well those things are competing with my little puppy named Bruce. This is my favorite animated GIF. It's a cat wearing a shark costume, riding a Roomba, chasing a duck. I'm not sure that even this webinar can compete with this animated GIF. If I saw that on LinkedIn right now, I'd probably switch over to that, right? I'm going to try to do my best to keep your attention, but we're all or have or plan to watch Tiger King. I want you to think about how well your content or the content of your clients competes with pictures of babies and kittens and puppies and tigers. And I know Julia mentioned earlier today, I couldn't really find her stats, 5.6 or it was 3.6, now it's 6. There's a lot of, this is what Google told me. So I listen to Google when they tell me how many daily searches on Google. It's 5.6 billion. It's a lot. That's the whole point I wanted to make. There are a lot of people searching on Google. Domo used to create a similar infographic. This is now being done by Lori Lewis at Officially Chad. There's a lot of content being created every single minute of the day. According to this, 4.5 million videos have been viewed in just the last minute. We're literally creating more content than the entire human race could actually consume. So you could argue that we're drowning in content. Why should we create more? And in fact, I received an email earlier this week that was pretty disturbing. We'll call him or her Mr. or Mrs. Wrong. That is not a picture of him or her. It's just an image for my stock photo of grumpy old man. But the email said, I compete in a completely oversaturated space. What's the chance I'll win those search results through content marketing? 0. I'm a little guy. I don't have the resources to break through that wall of noise on keywords alone. Well, this is Mr. Wrong, and I'm here to prove to you that, because you talked about Mark Schaefer and Content Shock, which I'm on record of respecting everything that Mark does, but respectfully disagreeing with Content Shock. I believe it's a rehashing of the information overload argument from, well, it really started when I think cavemen drew on caves, and then a second caveman drew on the cave, and they said, oh my God, it's too many images. We could never handle it. And Gutenberg invented the printing press, and we thought we were going to be building houses with useless books, right? We don't build houses with books. We actually read more books as we publish more. We consume more content as we create more. We are looking for more answers to questions as we increase our searches on Google. So again, don't take my word for it. I'm here to show you some data that proves this. This is how I actually got started creating content. I was the head of digital marketing, the first head of digital marketing at SAP in 2007. And I Googled my name thinking I should probably walk the walk a little bit. And I literally compete with a brain surgeon, a rocket scientist, a historian who's published like 60 books. Now, after 11 years of blogging, I started personal blogging in 2009. After 11 years, I now thankfully show up second. I'm still not first. I mean, I can't compete with the rocket scientist, and that's okay. Maybe Google's right in making me second. I probably shouldn't even be second, but that's how I got started. The point is, though, Michael Brenner doesn't matter to you. Marketing Insider Group doesn't matter to you or my clients. They're looking for answers to questions. They're looking for solutions to problems. That often takes the form of something like content marketing strategy or thought leadership. And so those are the things that I focus on. I love to use this Venn diagram to try to show folks what I believe marketing really should be. Because on the left-hand side, whether you're a brand marketer or an SEO, this is true. Most businesses think marketing should be, this is who we are, this is what we sell, and this is why we are awesome. And, when I walked into a conference the first time I met Andy Crestodina, I didn't walk up and say, Andy, I am awesome. No, in fact, I probably said, Andy, you're awesome. Or I said, how are you doing? How are you finding the conference, right? We ask questions when we want to get to know people. We don't start with how awesome we are. Right. So that's what people think marketing should be. on the left-hand side are pictures of puppies and kittens and Tiger King. And that doesn't serve our business. That's just charity. We only call it content marketing because it's to kind of, I think, clarify what marketing really should be. And that's something that attracts buyers using the expertise that we have at our companies that answers the questions that our customers are asking. And that's how I start with the definition of what marketing really should be, of what content marketing can be. But I also firmly believe, as a former salesperson and a marketer who's always focused on results, that marketing should deliver a return. And so that's what I want to talk about today. This is a combination of 15 of our clients who are each spending about $85,000 per month on paid efforts. And they weren't seeing necessarily a return on ad spend. In fact, the average was, I think someone said it earlier today, it was less than 1%. It was almost immeasurable. There were one or two clients that were seeing some revenue from it, but it was not providing a return. It was not 1.01 on an index. They weren't getting $1.01 for every dollar they were spending. They were getting something like 95 cents for every dollar they were spending. So that's what we were seeing on average prior to engagements. We typically see about $4,000 a month with our clients. They're getting 2 articles a week, 8 articles a month. And you can see the trend in blue. That's traffic that they're generating from their websites. You can see the trend in orange or yellow, depending on how it shows up for you. That's some form of quantified value, whether it's leads or sales or event registrations. For some companies, it's measured a little bit differently. But again, the point I want to make is that when you focus on delivering content that your customers want, you see not just a rate of return, but an accelerating compounding rate of return. Even if you get a return on ad spend, that return drops to 0 the second you stop spending.
That's right.
So this is the compounding return, or the, sort of the accelerating asset, the financial asset that your website can be if you focus it on customer-focused, continuous content. So again, I want to tell a very brief case study on myself. This is our website. Launched the business in 2015. So we've only been around for 5 years. In fact, a year after Content Shock article was published, which said we shouldn't publish any content because we'll never rank for keywords. I just believed that wasn't necessarily the case. Today, and this is just pulled from Semrush. I know they asked me to say Semrush, but I've always called it Semrush.
Either works. No, we're not judging.
Okay, excellent. It's much easier to pronounce than any other tools that you could mention. So thank you, Semrush, for this amazing opportunity for me to show that, look at this, I now rank for 24,505 keywords, when 4 years ago, I ranked for 0 keywords, not 1. I had a personal blog I published once every couple of times a month, didn't rank for anything. Launched the company website 2015, in June actually of 2015, almost a year, 5 years ago. And you can see the slow and steady rise. We continued to publish 2 to 3 articles a week. And I'll show you some of the approaches that we take. It's not rocket science. I didn't have any SEO brilliance behind me. It was just a matter of answering customer questions that we were getting asked on a regular basis. This is a snapshot. I just pulled this today. We actually used to rank number 2, I think, for marketing. We've dropped a few places.
Wow.
I know we dropped a few from the latest BERT update. So
you're right. For what is marketing?
Ranked for what I was number 1 and for marketing, and number 2 for what is marketing. Here's one of my favorite things.
That's a vanity metric. You've got to consider that you're doing something right? Even if that's a low quality visitor, even if you don't, we don't overvalue page views, blah blah blah. You're doing something right. You gotta give props to that. I mean,
thanks. Yeah, it's one of the things I find really interesting is I rank for almost all of the misspellings of the word marketing. And the reason is because I misspell it a lot. And I actually don't go back and change it unless I'm like republishing an article, and I will fix it. I rank for marketing, as you can see there, for marketing, for marketing, macroting, I think, all kinds of different misspellings of the word marketing. So you don't have to be perfect in the content that you create. I know this is something you guys talked about earlier, and Andy, you and I think are 98% in agreement on thought leadership. If you Google what is thought leadership, you'll see an ad from a multi-million, if not billion-dollar company, Accenture. Well, I don't need to advertise because I show up number 2 mostly for this term, what is thought leadership? And I totally agree with the presentation you gave, Andy, The one thing that I do differentiate a little bit is on how opinionated you should be. I kind of, it's funny because in my article, I'm saying you don't need an original thought, but I'm actually answering the question in a slightly, sort of argumentative way, you could say. It's a little bit controversial because I'm basically saying if you answer the biggest questions or bust the biggest myths on the minds of your target audience, you could call that thought leadership. Sure, So you and I have talked about this. I think we largely agree. The point is, this is what I do for our clients. And we rank number 2 ahead of a multi-million-dollar, if not billion-dollar company that I know is spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on that ad that shows up above me, on that ad that I know gets fewer links and fewer clicks than the organic listing that we get. We, as I mentioned, we show up, I think I just did this today. We're number 3, but we're number 3 after the AMA.org and HubSpot, who's been around for, more than 10 years. They probably should be ranked ahead of me. But my point is, I'm competing with some pretty big companies. I have 2 employees, me and one other person.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Google's showing the date on this SERP. Your article is obviously older than 1 year. Is this a piece that you go back and update?
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think I talk about it here in this presentation, but I actually do. I have a regular popular post update. I go back, we could do a whole 30 minutes on this, but I actually go back and I look 3 years and older, and I redirect articles that are 3 years and older that have no traffic. I redirect those to articles that, on those same keywords that are currently getting traffic.
Smart. I didn't mean to interrupt you. We'll see if we got questions on that topic. But
I do have a repost and a kill, essentially redirect strategy on some of the content that we've published.
Great.
Yep. I'm basically recapping an article I wrote to share all of this. So you can all go check it out, how we rank number 1 and get nearly 1 million visitors. It was 950,000, I think, in 2019. We'll take that rounding up any day of the week. The budget I spend on content is absolutely zero. It's 3-4 hours of my time. I know in your survey you said, Andy, 4 hours per blog post. I spend about 2, but again, I'm not focusing on original thoughts necessarily all the time, just really trying to answer customer questions most of the time. I think like you are as well. But that's it. So 3 to 4 hours a week of investment in my time, zero budget. This is the biggest mistake I see brand marketers make. And I think even SEOs make this mistake as well, is we talk about the things that we should do or the things that we're going to do in a project. We make a proposal. We try to convince other executives of the value of SEO content. I think we all fail to understand the importance of the business case. And I showed you, that chart where the trend goes up and to the right. It's a financial asset that you own as a business when you rank for keywords. But this is the business case. It's to reach, engage, convert, and retain buyers you would have never reached if you spent all your budget on paid, if you put your logo on the side of a building, if all you do is talk about your products and services. Because most companies rank for their own brand keywords because all they do is talk about themselves. And when all you do is talk about yourself, all you're doing is talking to the people who already know you. And this is the business case. We need to reach new people. And we want to do that without having to pay to interrupt their content experiences, but by attracting them with our content experiences. So we use the keywords that they use. We create the content we think they want. And I'll show you how I do that. And then ultimately we convert them to sales and retain them over time. I already mentioned, content marketing, the trends here. That's one of the ways that I love to show brands that your brand name just isn't that important relative to the industry keywords that your customers are using. Google Trends is a great way to say, hey, if you're a cloud computing company and you sell cloud computing software, look at Google Trends of cloud computing searches versus your brand name. Guaranteed you're going to see more people are searching for cloud computing. Simple sort of way to visualize it, I think, for folks that aren't, fully understanding the SEO industry. Here's SEMrush's keyword gap, which is great. Again, I'm showing you the keyword gap against 2 what I call content competitors. I don't really know who I compete with as a content agency, marketing strategy agency. I know who I compete with for content, and that's Content Marketing Institute, HubSpot, AMA.org, even Forbes. And so when I look at keyword gaps, I want to look at my content competitors, not necessarily my direct competitors. Now you can see here, I ran that report here just today for this presentation, and it's saying promote YouTube videos, marketing director job duties, digital marketing manager, industry thought leaders, LinkedIn for business. Here's what I look at. This is a little tip that I love. I'm sure you all in the SEO industry know this, but brand marketers get this right away. I don't care about volume. I don't care about competitiveness. I don't care about keyword density. I want to see who's paying for these keywords. That's what I rank on. And that's the content I want to create, because I'm assuming people are paying for it because there's buying intent, there's search, there's a dollar intent, there's a conversion that happens at the end of that. I'd love people's thoughts on that little tip.
I love that. I think it's counterintuitive. Years ago, I seem to remember there was like some kind of keyword research tool that called that heat. Like,
yeah.
But your word intent is even better. It's like, does this have strong enough intent that somebody's willing to put down some cash for it? Like that must correlate with quality of visitor or likelihood of conversion, or
it's a big leap because you're assuming the advertisers are getting a return on it or that they see value in doing it. But even assuming that they're all evenly stupid or evenly intelligent, on average.
Jump in anytime, right, guys. Unmute and jump in if you've got thoughts anytime.
Yeah. All right. So because of this report, I did actually create this article, and your director of marketing is miserable unless they focus on customers, based on some research that showed that unfortunately directors of sales and marketing are the second most miserable job title after directors of IT, which are basically the three most titles that I deal with most of the time. So unfortunately, I'm dealing with miserable people all the time, except for those folks that are really focused on customers. So that was kind of the point there. This is the SEO Content Template. So another great report from Semrush, which I used here. I used Thought Leadership to try to help me understand what are the related keywords, where should I be looking for backlinks. One of the things I love is the recommended text length, 855 words. Whoa. Let's have a big debate. Not right now. Let's wait. Let's have a big debate, because I wrote an article because of the question I get all the time. Andy, you know this. I asked you to comment. How many words should a blog post have? And I just summarized some research and used some of my own expertise. There were some pretty interesting comments. I haven't seen an article to get nasty comments in a while, so we can talk about that maybe in a little bit.
Separate from that, let me just say briefly, that is an amazing tool. I'm very familiar with on-page graders, on-page SEO graders. The Semrush tool is a step above the rest. They never want me to plug them, but they're our host, and I'm going to say this because I absolutely believe it's 100%. This tool is better than the others because it analyzes the other pages that rank for the phrase.
Yeah.
It's not best practices. It's the keyword niche. It's basically looking at the other pages that rank for that phrase and saying these pages have around this, an average of this number of words. And even more important, Michael, the semantically related words, that is gold. That's showing you what terms are used on the other pages that Google believes to be relevant to this topic.
Yeah.
Work those in. That's semantic SEO. If you're not doing that, you're not really doing SEO.
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
No, you're right. I appreciate it. And you're right. They did not ask me to plug them. I'm talking about some other tools, but I mean, I'm in Semrush every day. It's what we do for our clients. We find a lot of value from this tool. It's really just a starting point, though. And
the backlink section, worthless. Sorry, Semrush. I don't like that. How does that help me? How do I get backlinks from like Harvard Business Review? Like, that's not going to happen.
We gotta have equal time. Some negative and positive. All right, here's another tool. I'm sure most of us in this industry know BuzzSumo, but I use it. This is Semrush said promote YouTube videos is a topic I should look at. It's a keyword gap. Go I search for this in BuzzSumo. I look at the top 10 or 20 listings based on how much engagement they received in social. Not that it's the ultimate measure of quality, but it's at least a data point that I can use to reverse engineer what looks to be popular from a social engagement perspective. It's just one of the perspectives I use when I start to think about what content should we create. I just Google the term. Hey, I just Google the term. I look at the top 10, top 20 listings. Who does Google think is ranking well and why? Really simple stuff. The point, though, is I start with keywords and then I quickly move to content. What content is engaging on social? What content is ranking for Google? And then I start to, sort of comprise the outline and my own thoughts on how do you promote YouTube videos. I actually, for this one, I'm publishing it in a couple of weeks. I interviewed a couple of my clients who have video marketing experts, and they're going to share their thoughts in that article. So that was sort of tip number one. Deadlines are the greatest source of inspiration. And I use a tool called DiviHQ to manage the calendar of content ideas. It's a quote, my favorite quote from Mark Twain. I also call it the daily news approach to publishing. And what I say is, I do still get the newspaper in print. And I love to say that even on Monday morning, when the New York Stock Exchange has been closed for 2 days, they still have a business section, right? There's not a lot of business, news happening over the weekend, but they still publish news in the business section. They always have, sports and arts and entertainment and, opinion sections, as you talked about earlier. Well, for me, it's content marketing, marketing strategy, event marketing, and employee activation. Why? Because we do content marketing for our clients. We focus on marketing strategy for CMOs. I speak at events, so I try to help event marketers, and we help to develop thought leadership programs for large enterprises. We try to publish on a rolling basis 2 articles every other week for each of these categories. So it's not just frequency, but I think it's consistency against common themes. Andy, you were talking about, I don't know, you said something about fractals, and it was really smart. But I think it relates to this. Yeah.
I mean, it's interconnected content is the key to, I saw it was like an XKCD comic, that web comic.
Yep.
You guys know XKCD? Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah.
He had like this thing of why Wikipedia. You start on Wikipedia and then suddenly 4 hours of your life disappears and you've visited 65 articles. Why does that work? Because families of interconnected content draw visitors deeper. They share better authority, so they rank higher in Google. So yeah, that idea of every topic in the universe can be organized on a giant fractal. And a giant fractal is that similar idea of the things that benefit time on site, that benefit page authority, that benefit conversion. So this is part of a killer strategy.
Thanks. Now, this is probably my most controversial slide. I saw some comments earlier that quantity has absolutely no correlation to results, and I'm gonna respectfully disagree. I'm not sure what the data or expert opinion was behind that or experience. This is HubSpot. They looked at thousands of websites and they found that the more often you publish, the higher your traffic and the higher the leads are that you get. I will though say that I do believe that frequency correlates to results, not necessarily creates the results. Again, I think it's more consistency of quality content against various themes, but again, we see a sweet spot between 2 and 4 articles per week.
Well, is it true that attempts correlate with success?
Exactly. It's kind of like your comment on how many words does a blog post need to have. Good quality content tends to be a little longer is a great way. I think you said it, Andy. And so again, I'll give up that it's not a driver of the result, but it correlates for sure. Okay, quick little case study on 3 different companies to try to prove my point. Company at the top left, this is organic search over time in Semrush. Company I've been chasing for 4 years. They keep saying they're interested in content marketing, but they don't do it. Search results have declined by about 300% over the last 4 years. Bottom left company, they do random acts of content. They are not strategic. They don't publish against themes. Sometimes they publish once a week. Sometimes they publish once a month. Usually it's executive whims that decide what they publish. Their organic search traffic is flat. And because they're losing market share to competition, they're chasing it with paid, which you can see in that orange line at the bottom. On the right-hand side is a client we've been working with for a couple of years. They publish 2 to 4 articles a week against 4 or 5 themes, and you can see that their organic search traffic is up significantly over time, significantly. And again, I'm not saying that the frequency drives the result, but I do think that there's a correlation again. Tip 3, focus on buyer interests. We have a client, GE. They want to talk about MRI machines. They target radiologists. If you go to Google and you do radiologist space, radiologists want to know about how much money they should be making. This is true of almost every persona on the internet. So we created a radiologist salary guide, most popular piece of content that they've ever generated. This is a tip I got from you, Andy. You go to your affinity categories or search interests in Google Analytics. You can see my audience at Marketing Insider Group is most interested in media and entertainment. And because of that tip from you, Andy Crestodina, a couple years ago, I thought, well, what's the most popular television show at the time? It was Game of Thrones. So I wrote 5 storytelling lessons from Game of Thrones, one of my most popular pieces of content in 2015. Just another great way to start thinking about inspiration for how to focus more on your customers' interests and less on our natural desire to want to talk about ourselves. I love this tool, Answer the Public. If you're not familiar, it provides this great mind map on what you should be talking about, journalistic approach to content, who, what, when, where, why, and how for just about any topic. What I found is that every one of our clients that go through this who, what, when, where, why, how process generally tend to rank significantly higher for that target keyword. SEMrush also has a great tool that also mind maps. Here you can see their thoughts on thought leadership as well. So, again, another way to think about how to map content to the buyer journey. I'm not an SEO expert, but I am aware that there are 3 basic elements to SEO. There's technical, on-site, off-site. We really focus on the on-site part. And again, the areas of focus for us are, do you have 4 to 5 key themes like a newspaper does? Do you focus on content quality? Do you publish consistently, and maybe frequency isn't the right word, but consistently with a general natural internal link strategy? Also, I think URL structure is important. We see a lot of brands that use like news / or, they don't have any keyword, category keywords in their content. This is a simple tip that I love to use for brands because almost none of them do it. And they're all losing, I think, an opportunity for improving their search. Again, not a technical SEO expert, certainly not an offsite SEO expert. I know you talked a little bit about that earlier today, but focusing on onsite, those are the elements that we really look at. Joe Polizzi, one of my biggest inspirations in the industry, talks about content energy and how too many people focus their energy across too many different types of content. We really focus on the written word. We provide the baseline SEO-driven content for our clients. It's what we do for ourselves. I don't create infographics. I don't do videos. I don't have a podcast. But I do love to take research, infographics, podcasts, and videos from other people and embed them in the articles that I write. And that's my attempt at trying to get to, a relative consistent volume. This is your quote, Andy, best answer on the internet, or is it Lee Oden? I always forget.
I heard Lee say it just a few hours ago in this event.
There you go.
I'm not that concise. The way I put it is create the best piece of content for your topic.
There you go. I once attributed this quote for all of you to know to Andy.
It wasn't me.
And Lee got upset with me. So Lee, thank you for this great quote. Andy, you said something very similar as well. So again, if you don't have budget for infographics and podcasts and videos and all the research that I know we talked about earlier today, just write about everybody else's. You can be a journalist and cover the trends and the important stats and research in your industry, but also put your own spin on it. And so that's one of the things that we do, focusing on on-site factors. All right, just wrapping up here, just quick sort of process note. We take the most important keywords for ourselves. We look at, like I said, generally the CPC paid for in paid links as a focus area. I use the keyword gap tool for SEMrush based on relative to some of the content competitors, and then I slap that up against the internet, Google search, BuzzSumo, Answer the Public. Just a simple Google search, like I said, and start to reverse engineer titles that I think are going to help me to rank for those keywords. We then look at them by theme or category, and we start to map them 2 to 3 every week against each of those 4 different categories. It doesn't take a rocket scientist or a brain surgeon to create this calendar, to think about the 4 themes for you, to look at the focus keywords, to slap that up against the internet and see what content out there already ranks for it, and to start calendarizing what you do. My final plug for SEMrush, we do this for all of our clients, and you'll see, I think, some of the impact of Bert on my visibility. But I then take that list of targeted keywords and I throw it into SEMrush, and I am constantly tracking visibility over time. One of the things that I love is not only how am I doing relative to content competitors, but also it's a great way, I think, for me to see, and I don't know if there's other tools that help people do this, but really where I'm getting those featured snippets, and some of those other sort of, search listing zero. I forget the term. What's the actual SEO term that you guys all use?
The featured snippet used to be, they call it ranking zero, but now Google changed so that the featured snippet is technically number 1 because there's only 9 other organic listings below it.
Yeah. So that's one of the things I'm always looking at, not only the number one rankings, but the featured snippet as well, to make sure. And, you know, part of what you're seeing here is, like I said, I just went from number 3 or number 2 to number 4, number 5 on what is marketing. So I'm seeing a small dip, and I'm actually okay with it because it's not the most qualified traffic for me. But I am always looking at, where do I have the featured snippet? Where do I have those page 1 rankings? I also love to look at page 2 rankings and try to figure out, Andy, like you said, those content articles that need a little bit of love. Always looking at page 2 because of the massive increase you can get by moving to page 1. All right, so you have 2 choices. Again, you can take the approach that Mr. Wrong takes, and that's that the world is filled with too much content. You should just give up and send all your money over to Facebook or paid search. Sponsor your logo on a stadium, or do a Super Bowl ad. You could take that approach. Or you can take the approach that I laid out here, define the keywords, look at the content that's already been created that ranks, put your own spin on it, look at research that's being spent in your industry, put your opinions on that, answer the questions that your customers have, focus on your audience over promoting your own products, and I think you can rank and win. So,
Thank you.
Michael, I love it.
Well done.
all right,
Yeah.
now you're going to throw stuff at me, right?
Yeah, we're going to bring in the panel. 2 thoughts before we do. One, if you are a Semrush user and have never clicked on that drop down in the top left that takes you to the content marketing toolkit, that's where you'll find all these tools he just mentioned. Because there's a lot in there. You give yourself a tour of the tool you're already paying for, because the content marketing section of Semrush is totally underrated. Someone else mentioned earlier the SEO Writing Assistant, also a fantastic tool. Mm-hmm. Also, Akib Khan, you win for being the most consistent. Thank you for all of the input. I'm going to find you on LinkedIn and do some endorsements in a minute when we're done here. Let's bring in our panelists. We have bright people who've been very quiet. Michelle, your thoughts.
I do have thoughts. Gosh, now I've trying to think back to what I specifically wanted to say about, well, if we do want to talk about content length, I think that something that I found interesting when I was editor-in-chief at Search Engine Land Marketing, Land Martech Today, and sometimes I would hire out other journalists to cover specific topics. And even our own writing staff would sometimes say, how many words do you want that to be? And my response was always, as many as it needs, no more, no less. Right? Because topics and content do have a finite amount of information that's actually relevant. Otherwise, you're just stuffing content out there to appear to be comprehensive, to appear to be, larger than life, when sometimes something really only needs 300 words. A great example of this was at PubCon when there was a Q&A with Gary Yesh from Google. And he said, how many words do you need to give instructions on how to boil an egg? Right? So I really think that focusing on, I think sometimes we focus on the wrong things. It's not about the length, it's about the comprehensiveness and the authoritativeness. And like you said, are you answering a question? Are you solving a problem?
I completely agree. And in the post, Andy knows this, but in the post I have in bold in the second paragraph, an article should only be as long as it needs to be. And one of my favorite examples is list posts. I mean, I've written a number of list posts that are 450 words that have gotten a lot of engagement and traffic because they answer the question. List posts can be fun for certain topics. But in general, a lot of the data shows, and again, there's lots of, the way I position this needs to be very careful. I get the question all the time, and so I try to provide an intelligent answer.
Sure, yeah.
It created some controversy and some great discussion, which is always, good to see.
I tell people I work very, very hard to write short words, short sentences, and short paragraphs, but I never try to write a short post. I write it until it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. Once you've covered all the bases.
Yeah.
The Stephen King advice about writing is to write it and then go back and take out 10% of the words.
Yeah. I probably do that.
Trim it back. Yeah.
And Michael, I love that you're talking about writing consistently. And it seems like for your agency and probably the way you're coaching your clients is really just to figure out what is that process to get into that rhythm so that it happens. So it actually happens. We've had the experience of putting together a content calendar, but then people get busy, that sort of thing. For our agency, we've really focused on just the people that we have that are producing content and what form works best for them so that it would actually happen. For me, I have my marketing manager schedule a webinar like this every 2 or 3 weeks. Even if there's only 10 people on it, that's how she knows she can get me to put together a presentation. We can record it, put together an outline, and then I'll actually write the article based on that outline because I have all my thoughts together. But when we're working with clients, a lot of what we're doing initially is just trying to figure out like who are the experts. Like we're trying to get the information out of their head. Obviously, we care about like what are the useful topics and questions that your customers are asking, but we're trying to get to that like consistent rhythm, Michael, like you're talking about. So we're trying to figure out like what is the right form of content that we can consistently get out of these individuals, and then how do we augment that with a contract writer or whatever it is to turn it into a number of other useful pieces of content. But Michael, I'm really curious for you, like how do you keep the streak going? It's like 5 years.
Yeah, well, it's funny. So one of the reasons Andy and I have a 2% disagreement on thought leadership is my article actually was written in sort of a version of it I wrote for SAP when I worked for a guy who really believed that thought leadership needed to be an original thought. And I told him, I'm like, unless you're Henry Ford or maybe the founder, unless you created Elon Musk, maybe, I don't know. There's a few folks in the world that have come along, Einstein, that have had original thoughts. But unless you're that smart, why don't we just focus on creating something?
Yeah.
And the first thing you create will probably suck. And the 100th thing you create will probably be pretty good. And the best way to get from 0 to 100 is by saying you're going to do 2 a week. So let's start with a simple question and a simple answer via email. And, maybe we get caught up in the term thought leadership. What's really funny is when I wrote that article, What is Thought Leadership? And I said it doesn't need to be a unique thought. He actually disagreed with me in the comments. Oh yeah, that was probably the day I decided to leave SAP, and I love that organization. But to me, it's really deadlines are the greatest source of inspiration, and I think that always on process is what helps thought leaders. If no, you can't call yourself that, by the way. But if we want to become known as thought leaders, it starts by taking that first step and learning our way as we go, and ultimately forming or being more comfortable with sharing those opinions. So I find the deadline really is important for both a brand, a business, and an individual to, start to learn how to flex that muscle.
I think that's interesting. That didn't necessarily come through in that way when I first heard you say that just now, but one of the benefits of a relatively high frequency is that it pushes you to flex the muscle and take more shots and more inspiration. If your frequency is higher, then your inspiration will be higher if deadline drives inspiration.
Yeah, and again, I wrote it almost as a rant, as like a subservient criticism of my boss at the time, because I was trying to ghostwrite for him, and I'd throw things over the wall, and he'd throw them back and say they weren't good enough, they weren't original, they needed to be thought leadership, and all of the content I thought I was writing was pretty good, and so it kind of get me to this point is there's the cost of perfect is too high one to pay. But you can still have good thoughts that help people, and you should publish that.
I think it's a good idea to have a perspective, right? Yeah. So thought leadership is really about having and sharing a perspective, and you might have a different perspective or a different way of looking at something, and so it's okay to write about it, even if there, to your point, there might be 5,000 other articles about, I don't know, dogs. You might have a different perspective on dogs, and it's perfectly legitimate and valuable to go out there and share that perspective. But I do think that's key. I think that putting things out just because you look at your content calendar and you think, oh, today I have to write something on SEO, so I'm going to talk about this. And when you're forced to formulate an idea, I think it's a lot harder to create valuable content that way. And I do think it's important to be creating valuable content, not just creating content. And that sometimes gets lost in the message because people get too on a treadmill. It's oh, it's Monday, I've got to write a blog post.
Yeah.
If you don't have a perspective, maybe skip that week.
Yeah. I like to think of it as myth busting. Like almost every article I write busts some sort of conventional wisdom. You know, like my frequency chart is kind of a busting of the quality versus quantity discussion. It's a false choice. You know, you need to do both. One way to do that is to, you know, bust myths. And so I like to, it may not be a unique perspective, but at least it's a view on what do people believe that maybe they should think differently about.
And Michael, like, it's clear that you guys have done well with SEO for the content that you guys have written, and kudos for that. For us, we found like SEO benefits, obviously, but just having those pieces of content for sales conversations, like we started doing some direct outreach in LinkedIn and like, hey, I wrote an article about that. And when we have that conversation and sending that to people. So, love the idea that like once we've invested in a rhythm of building a body of useful content, then we get to look at that archive and just figure out so many different ways that we can leverage it going forward.
Yeah, it's well, and I think it wasn't two presentations ago they were talking. It was the guy from Impact was talking about. I'm sorry, I forgot.
Right, Kevin Phillips from Impact was talking assignment selling. He called it, but writing for the potential buyer in the bottom of your funnel, who maybe you've already sent a proposal to.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, they're doing great work, and Marcus Sheridan has been a big inspiration for me as well. Mm-hmm. They ask, you answer, and I mean, my clients are sick of me sending them blog posts in answer to an email question, because it's the greatest, one of the greatest sources of inspiration for me, and I think it's a great way to answer those questions in the sales process for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, if you're writing long emails to your prospects, you're creating content. You're wasting your time if you're doing that, but not also repurposing that into articles that you can then send them. You're doing something right. If people ask you questions and in your mind you go, oh, I wrote a detailed version of that. Here, I'm sending you a link. It's going to save you time in the long run.
Yep.
Yeah, and Andy, I love that, because one of the things that we've been doing is taking a look back at, and we're a marketing agency focused on SEO, e-commerce sites, and things like that. But taking a look back at emails that we've written answering people's questions, just mining the account. And then another thing we found be useful is looking at proposals. Proposals we've written where we're also answering questions and things like that, and just mining those for snippets of content that we can turn into longer articles.
Yeah, chat logs, customer service emails, the sent mail folder of any of your top sales associates, your help documents. These are all places.
Your internal search queries.
Yeah, internal. There's your site search. Site search report.
Yep.
These are powerful sources of content, and in that case, original becomes irrelevant. Thought leadership becomes irrelevant. Your job as a content marketer is to satisfy your audience's information needs.
Yeah.
Who cares if it's a new idea? It doesn't matter. This is thought leadership. That's a semantic question. We don't have to define the term thought leadership. It was a fun presentation I gave, but it's not necessarily important to the they have information needs. Your job is to meet those needs.
Yeah, and Dale, you also sort of alluded to conversion a little bit, and I didn't really get into that too much in the presentation. We get all of our leads, I'm going to say organically. Not all of them come through our website. I know, Andy, you get a lot of great conversion on your website. Interesting, a lot of my leads come directly from an outreach on LinkedIn, but because they read an article that I shared on LinkedIn or they read on my website. But I saw this guy, Andy Crestodina, a couple of years ago, gave this great advice to connect your conversion pages to your high traffic pages. And Andy, I just want to call you out for that one, because that's something that we try to do as well, just to improve conversion. I think it's a great tip. I don't know if you folks have any other thoughts. We get great traffic. It doesn't really convert on our website. It does create, I think, affinity and trust and relationship building that allows us to convert really directly on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that idea is that everyone, if you've been producing for a while, to Dale's point, right, you got to build up a body of work before you see what's working. If you've been producing for a while, you can go back and look at analytics and see what your best. It's cheese and mousetraps. What are your traffic magnets? They jump out of your analytics because they're normally the high-ranking, high-performing, top pages on your site traffic-wise, and then connect those to your best mousetraps, which are the articles that maximize that turn the maximum percentage of readers into subscribers. You have to look at your reverse gold path report to see how many people read that article and then filled out your newsletter sign-up form, and then divide that number by the page views on that article, which you can do with the fancy Google Sheets thing. But anyway, yeah, you've got pages that turn lots of readers into subscribers, and you've got pages that attract lots of readers, lots of internal linking to send the, to put your best cheese on your best mousetraps.
Yeah, and Andy, I latched onto something you had said earlier around taking a look at the sent folder of your salespeople. That kind of starts to bust one of the myths around thought leadership, which is some of the clients that we work with, they're really thinking that only the principal of the organization is the one who can be writing content. And then obviously that just causes bottlenecks and delays, and consistency's out the window because there's only one guy who can write the content. So like what we're talking about a lot of times is how to broaden the base of writers within the organization, so that we've got account managers at an agency who are writing content. We've got analysts who are writing content, and then even like when we're looking at somebody junior in a firm, it might be, well, write about a case study, like, because there's got to be something you did and you saw a result. So just think about that, and that becomes an article. And we're trying to leverage as many people as we can in the organization.
Yeah, and that goes to.
Go ahead, Michelle.
I was going to say, to your point that you made earlier, Dale, about leveraging the different people in the organization and how you can get content out of them. So we do the same thing, where we leverage everyone in each department to be able to write to what their expertise is and share, case studies, client wins, things like that, in the form of blog posts. And we have an analyst who, he's not a writer, not very interested in producing written content, but he wanted to develop a Python video series. So he's developed their very quick, 10-minute videos, just, kind of intro to how you can, hook up Google APIs with Python and, generate some automated functions and things for your clients, for the agency. And it's been working out great because it plays to his strengths, it plays to, what he can showcase as his expertise, but it's in a format that he's comfortable doing and producing. And then we can take those videos and leverage them across all of our channels, right? So we post them on YouTube, and then we transcribe them, and there are blog posts that embeds the video. And then we're sharing it on all of the social channels and things like that. And he's doing them as snippets that we're going to ultimately roll up into a much larger piece of content. So when you start leveraging your content across your people and across your channels, it's less of a lift, right? A lot of people, whenever they think about like, oh gosh, I've got this content marketing calendar and it's got 20 things and we're going to do all of this, it looks so overwhelming. It's hard to just start. But when you break it down into smaller pieces and leverage your people, leverage your channels, that's where we found the most success.
I can't agree more, Michelle. In fact, my standard keynote these days is the future of marketing is employees, and not just from a content, but a distribution and as well as a talent recruitment. I mean, it's really interesting how sales and HR and marketing are starting to all just come together. I think every brand should have an employee activation program where they're looking for those people that want to share what they know. Make sure they're doing it on your corporate website so you're getting that SEO juice, and then celebrate the heck out of them on every social channel. You're going to generate new leads. You're going to generate talented employees who want to be thought leaders, and it really comes full circle.
And Michael, how do you feel about investing in an employee to helping them build their personal brand? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I always go back to the quote. I always screw it up, but it's like somebody said, why should we invest in training for our people? They'll get smart.
It's Richard Branson.
Thank you.
And the quote is, but what if we invest in our employees, career advancement, and they leave? And the response is, what if we don't and they stay?
Exactly. I feel the same way about investing in employees' thought leadership.
Exactly.
A company of very strong personal branded employees is a very powerful marketing engine. Any way you look at it, whether they stay for a little while and even if they leave after a while, and what talented employee doesn't want to be part of a company that celebrates that? And so it's a long-term win for sure, but there's nothing more powerful, and that's why I think the future of marketing is really moving in that direction.
A similar converse question. Anthony Nixon asks, what if you're a one-person brand? Content machine with a single individual?
Yeah, I was a company of one until last year. So, that's really what, and it's true even of just personal branding. I think if you just have a personal blog or website, I think figuring out, kind of like you said, Andy, earlier, your fractal or your, the content themes that I've talked about, writing down everything and then turning that into a content calendar, I think really can be super, super effective.
Well, I think a good place to start for individuals is be an aggregator of industry information, right? It's pretty easy if you don't have time to create your own content, but you're following everything that's happening in the industry and you do have a newsletter list or even just your client list. Start putting together once a week, here information you need to know about, things you might have missed, that kind of thing, and just aggregate other people's content, maybe with a little snippet. And then you can start developing, for one thing, really close strategic relationships with your clients, because then they come to rely on you for staying up to date on everything that's happening. They know that you are. But then you can also start from there, develop it out and start writing more content, but just doing something like that, a roundup blog post.
Yeah.
And I love this conversation about leveraging internal resources.
Yeah.
But there's also content partnerships.
Right.
So a lot of times what we're looking at, because a lot of what we do, we'll start with a video presentation and then we reuse the heck out of it. But a lot of what we'll do is invite another organization to participate in an online event or, a recorded video that we're putting together. And that just has so many benefits. At the end of the day, we're sharing their audience, we're lending them our audience, we're getting access to their audience. And then there's a lot to be said for the trust that you gain with your audience, just being associated with other brands and other people who know what they're talking about and, share useful information and all that kind of stuff. But, we got some people on this panel that I'm sure are doing interesting things for partnerships. So I'd love to hear it.
Well, inviting other people to write for your blog.
Yeah.
You're a solo producer. That doesn't mean you're the only one on your blog. It's curation, to Michelle's point, right? You can just invite other people into your content. And even if you've got the byline on every article, that doesn't mean that you can't fill your content with sources, contributor quotes, roundups, interviews.
Interviews, interviews.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. You guys, we are finishing strong. This has been 5 hours of content. We're down to the last 2 minutes of 5 hours of content. Wow. I'm really impressed. You should see the times of day that people are putting. Have you guys watched the stream at all? People are all over the world watching it all. It's like 3 a.m. in some places.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with the attendees. By the way, you guys, don't miss this chance to network with each other. Go back and look at the stream and find each other on LinkedIn, guys. Connect, network. Events, virtual events can still have networking benefits. All you've got to do is to copy and paste and find it and start a conversation. We're getting down to it. Dale, final thoughts on Michael or on anything?
Michael's a great guy. I'm just met him this week.
Yeah, on his personality. Any input?
I'll get to know him a little bit better, and then I'll get back to you. But we've really focused on consistency throughout this, and that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. All of this is about, how do we do the best targeting we can, choose the best topics we can while maintaining consistency, because that's what it's going to be about at the end of the day. So we'll circle back to that.
This program has been an example. I hope I've seen great stuff all throughout. Michelle, your thoughts?
Great presentation by Michael. I don't have much to pick apart with it. It was, by the book, what people should be doing. I do think that, just starting, if you haven't begun doing your own content, and I know it's hard, we're all, shoeless cobblers at some point, but just get started somewhere and then develop a cadence for it.
Yeah, you got to begin. Take that first step. Journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. Michael?
Yeah, I just, again, my whole hope here was to myth bust that, there's too much noise out there and, you have no chance of ranking. I think I've proven that you can do that. Marketing should be accountable to a return on investment. I think we've talked through that. I think it's pretty simple. You pick your keywords, you create a schedule, and you just, bang it out. And so, I appreciate the opportunity to present our there's a fly in my face, to present this, the insights in our own little case study. Andy, I'd love your final thoughts as well.
Well, I missed a little bit of the beginning of this, but I want to just point out that there has been a through line in this event. We have talked, and the dots connect. Michael added strategy at the end, which wraps it up. And thank you, Michael, Dale and Michelle. But we got we're combining influencers with visuals, with search and ranking and analytics. You got Lee, you got Kevin, you got Julia, and the concept of thought leadership, the bottom of funnel thing. I think we keep coming back to that, right? It's like the most important audience. So I'm grateful for the chance to be part of this. I'm grateful for all the presenters and all the panelists. I'm thrilled that it came together as a mini curriculum. This is worth sharing, guys. This is worth bookmarking. This is worth watching again. Grateful again to our hosts. Subscribe to that YouTube channel because you're going to find more of this that way. You're going to miss stuff if you don't. And then, Michael, if you don't mind, put a bow on it. Any last thoughts?
Yeah, just get started creating helpful content for your customers. You can find me at marketinginsidergroup.com or on LinkedIn at Brenner Michael on Twitter. And thanks again for all of you for staying with us.
Michelle, where can we find you?
I am at Michelle Robbins on Twitter. You can find me at AimClear, Michelle at AimClear, if you want to send me a note. And find me on LinkedIn, Michelle Robbins.
I will. I want to hang out with all of you guys more.
Yes.
And Dale, where can people get more of your brain online?
So our e-commerce marketing agency is at fireandspark.com, all spelled out. So check us out, contact me through the site. I'm always happy to talk about this stuff.
And I'm Andy Crestodina. My Twitter handle is my last name, Crestodina. It's long, but it's spelled like it sounds. And Semrush continues to put out some of the best information, bringing the best people together, kind, generous, smart people, legit thought leadership. We are grateful for all of your attendance. We are grateful for the organization, to Anton, to Kate, to Casey, to everyone who's been a part of this and made this come together. It's hard to tell, guys, from the outside, like how much has to happen behind the scenes to create a program like this, how much work goes into it, and how, final thought, content marketing is a test of generosity. The brand of the person that gives away the most helpful, useful stuff from the goodness of their heart that makes the biggest impact for the most people wins. And it's a battle worth fighting. Win the test of generosity for yourselves the way that you just saw Semrush win it for all of us today. It's worth fighting for, guys. I'm inspired, motivated, and I have new ideas for doing a better job on my next piece. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Connect with each other. Help each other.